everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just going to give it a few more minutes for more people to join in, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. So, welcome once again. Very excited to have you here with us this evening for most of you. I'm Ifa Edu, MBA 2 and current president of the Africa Business Club. I will be moderating most of the session. And so I'm here with Brian Johnson, Associate Director of Admissions and Diversity Recruiting, as well as some members of the Africa Business Club board. I will jump right in by taking us through the agenda for this day. Awesome. So we're going to start with an overview of Michigan Ross and some admissions tips from Brian. And then I'll be jumping in to talk through an overview of the Africa Business Club alongside some members of the board. And then we'll jump into a Q&A session and then wrap up with a couple of next steps. So I'm going to hand over to Brian to walk us through the Michigan Ross overview.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Afua. As she just mentioned, I'm Brian Johnson. I'm Associate Director of Admissions, Diversity, and Inclusion. I'm also a Ross alum, so I'm really excited for you guys. If I could trade places with you, I absolutely would, because I had a fantastic experience back when I was here, and I watched students every day and every year just really live out some incredible journeys and experiences. So I'm really excited for you. See a little bit of my post-MBA experience after Ross. I did business development for companies like IBM and FedEx in the corporate executive board. Then came back here to work at Ross in executive education before being in admissions. One thing from a logistics standpoint that I'd like to point out is if you look on your dashboard on the right-hand side, you should see a question box as we go through this webinar, feel free to drop questions into that question box. We'll answer that during the Q&A session. So again, I'm going to go somewhat quickly through an overview of Ross, what makes us stand out, what we require in the admissions process, and then I'll hand it over to my esteemed students here in the African Business Club. So let's get started. So if you're looking at business schools, one thing that I hate about our industry is that we all sound the same. On our website, it's really hard to tell one from the other. And in a lot of cases, if you're going to a top 20, let's say, business school, you're going to get you're going to get some great experience. You're going to learn a lot about business. You're going to have some great alumni. And what I'd like to focus on is some areas where Ross really stands out. So the first thing, at Ross, we have unparalleled breadth and depth of hands-on learning. So first off, we really just believe that the best way to learn business is by doing business, and to learn these concepts through real, either simulated or real life situations. So I'll talk more about how we bring that to life. 9 out of the 10 of our business specializations is now ranked in the top 10, and actually I think as of yesterday it's 10 of the 10. So actually, we have a lot of top specializations in the top 10, be that strategy or marketing or entrepreneurship, or banking, etc. The only other school that has more than us is actually Stanford. So we're really in the upper echelon of expertise in these business areas. Also at the broader University of Michigan, we have over 100 top 10 ranked graduate programs. So whether you're interested in dual degrees in things like urban planning or education or public health or policy, and many other, I guess that would be probably 102 others, we're actually ranked top 10. So you can do dual degrees, but then also you can take up to 10 credits outside of the business school and as electives in your MBA. And then finally, we're #1 in alumni effectiveness. So that really is a rating of how quickly alumni will come to your aid, or will answer your call, or will help you throughout your career. So if you have other questions about that, feel free to ask, and I'll talk a little bit about it through the rest of my portion of the presentation. So as I talked, we believe that the best way to learn business is by doing business. And so we do that in a lot of ways. The main way that all students participate in is this thing called multidisciplinary action projects, or MAP. Sometimes people say MAP projects. It's a little redundant to me sometimes to say multidisciplinary action projects, but you'll hear people talk about their MAP projects. In a nutshell, after you do your first 3 quarters of coursework in your first year, where you're taking classes such as your accounting, your finance, your international business, your operations, your economics, etc., you then don't take classes anymore. You're going to leave the classroom environment and work for 7 weeks full-time with a real company working on a real strategic objective. We have over 85 projects in 29 countries last year. So about half of our projects are going to have some type of international component as well. And then your sponsors are going to pay for all your travel costs, so you don't have to come out of pocket. So if you're interested in having some type of international experience, this is a great way to do that on the school's dime. Also, the other thing that I'll mention about this is, for your, if you know anything about your internship experience after the first year, typical internships are going to last about 10 to 12 weeks. So what's great about this project is it's almost like another internship, because it is 7 weeks full time. You're not taking any classes at the time, and you're typically presenting to senior level executives. So as you're going throughout the rest of your MBA career, be it through second year recruiting, if you decide that you want to do something other than your internship offer, it's a good way for you to exhibit some knowledge about another industry, if that's what you'd like to do. A few other ways that we have experience-driven learning. We have something called the Living Business Leadership Experience, where you're working directly with real companies on real strategic initiatives in real time. So a lot of our MAP projects, which basically help you to allow our students to give a recommendation to these companies, are continued in this Living Business Leadership Experience, where these companies will have our students working on the implementation of those. And we have several companies from startups like this company called Warmaloo, which is really about a warming technology that was used to warm babies in emerging markets. They're trying to adapt that to more commercial environments, where maybe if you're at a football game, or you're at some sporting event in cold environments, where you're able to use it for that, for example. But we also have more established products such as a watch company and leather goods company here, where our students are working on doing a lot of the marketing, let's say for the Christmas season. So they're going to be running marketing strategy for that. So really great opportunities for that. We have 6 student-led investment funds. So this is where our students are investing real money in real time for real businesses. So they're basically working as a venture capital fund for different types of businesses. Our newest fund actually works with businesses or small to medium enterprises in emerging economies. So in Africa and in India, they're really looking to invest in those small businesses. So you get to be the venture capitalist that invests in those businesses. And then finally here we have Leadership Crisis Challenge, where you're simulating a leadership crisis, and you serve as a board of directors to get ready for a board meeting and to speak with real press about a leadership challenge, and there's more information about that as well. So this is just 3. I mean, honestly, there are dozens of these opportunities throughout the time that you're going to be at Ross. Another area where you do a lot of experience-driven learning is through these centers and institutes. So we have the William Davidson Institute, which is really about doing more of a deep dive into businesses in emerging markets, and how do you develop businesses that are going to both have social impact in many cases, but then also that are going to have financial impact as well in those emerging markets. We have a Zell Lurie Institute for individuals that are interested in starting their own businesses, or who already have businesses, where you can earn capital for your businesses. You can continue to develop the strategy for those businesses, or find partnerships for those businesses through that Zell Lurie Institute. Sanger Leadership Center is really about building the next generation of leaders, to kind of take our leadership curriculum that we have in our core, but then also to do a deeper dive so that you can start being, the next generation of leaders. And I know in some economies, building that leadership acumen is really important. So we have a lot of students that are interested in that. And then the Herb Institute is really about environmental sustainability. So how do you deal with energy challenges in specific areas? How do you deal with water challenges in specific areas? So these are just a few centers and institutes that our students are plugging into in a curricular basis. So they're developing classes, but then they also have extracurricular opportunities where you can either work on projects or really just work on yourself. So those are some different resources that are available, and a lot of our students are interested in those areas. So when we talk about Ross, we have a slogan which says, "Go Blue, go anywhere." So we're in this kind of a small-ish town here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And our students come here. I'll talk a little bit more about the town, but they typically don't stay here. So if you look at like our geographic placement on the left-hand side, we're having about 50% of our students are going to the coasts in the U.S. About 20-ish% end up in the Chicago area. About 10% end up international, or they go to international locales. If you look in the middle, you see 93% of our graduates are career switchers. So we're really able to help people pivot from doing things such as maybe they're engineers now and they want to go into consulting, or they're teachers and they want to go into technology. And you can see the median pay package there in the middle, and then little over 50% of our students are going into consulting or technology. That's this past class. We have people that go into all different industries, but those are our most popular. So I talked about the town. One thing about our that really differentiates Ann Arbor is our community. And if you talk to Ross students, people will talk about how close knit our community is, how collaborative we are, how we pay it forward or we look out for one another. A lot of that just comes from being in a town where people are experiencing the town and they're experiencing their classmates, and they're not pulled in a million different directions with people who are in their outside network. So our students are getting to know each other, but they're in a city where there are actually things to do. So my biggest challenge with talking about Ann Arbor is people just don't know where it is, but it's definitely a recognized city from a lot of different publications. So here you'll see we're the #1 most educated city in the United States, which is pretty big. If you're into sports, we're #1 sports town here. We're #1 city for millennials, and then also if you're into venture capital, we're in the top 20. And actually for women's startups, nationally, we're ranked #1 for women's startups. So if you're a woman or interested in starting a business, this is a great place to be. So what I really covered is that we have real experiences here, or we have a lot of opportunities for you to get your hands dirty or to learn business by doing business. We also have lots of opportunities to go internationally in terms of your experience, but then also once you graduate, you have a lot of opportunities to go into different functions and geographies after that. And then also we just have a community that's really energized, it's really ready to go out and to support one another, and that carries the Michigan and the Ross brand wherever they go. So the next question is, how do I get admitted? I get a lot of people who think, they say, well, I'm from, pick a country, and I don't know that I'm going to be competitive. Well, what makes our application different is that we have we only require one recommendation letter, so you don't have to go out and get a couple people to recommend you. Typically, we're looking for our recommenders to be kind of your first line manager, or someone that is able to really speak for your ability from a professional standpoint. It doesn't matter if that person is the CEO of your company. Sometimes I'll hear people say, well, should I get the CEO or should I get somebody really senior? It's less important to have someone senior than it is to have someone who can attest to your abilities, who can speak to some development areas that you might have, who can talk about the strengths that you bring to your role, or some accomplishments that you've had through your tenure. That's really letting us know your professional ability. Another area that we're looking for is fit. So the way that we assess whether you'll fit in with our culture here is through we have a short answer portion and an essay portion where you're able to share some specifics about yourself and some information about what you want to do after your MBA. One thing that we don't really ask in those questions is, why do you want to come to the Ross School? We're really interested in understanding what you want to do, and should you get an interview, that's where we'll want to know whether you or why you want to attend Ross. We have a team exercise where we're able to incorporate or allow people to interview in a group interview. For a lot of our international students, they don't do the team exercise. It's okay if you don't do that, but we also have some team exercises in some different geographies, and I can share more information about that as well. Then also we accept the TOEFL and the IELTS as well. If you are if you're from outside the U.S., but your undergraduate school was taught in English, you don't have to worry about taking that. So that's another thing. A lot of our African students aren't taking those tests, but if your undergrad was taught in a language that isn't English, then we'd want those tests. Here are the application deadlines. Really, round one and round two are our recommended rounds to apply. But if your application isn't really ready until round three, we do have round three. We have a third round. One thing that you want to think about here is if you're applying from outside of the U.S. Or you have to apply for a visa, you may want to factor that time in. That's why most of our students from outside the U.S. are applying in round one or round two. We also have more seats available in those two rounds. We don't have a shortage of seats in round one. Sometimes people think I need to apply early, so I don't. I'm going to wait to retake my GMAT because I want to get I want to get in round one. Don't worry about that. More than 70% of our applicants actually apply in round two. We only get about 20-ish% that are applying in round one. So apply when your application is at its strongest. If you have more questions about that, you can let me know. Here are some places that we have team exercises. So if you happen to be in Ann Arbor on a team exercise date, feel free to do that. We've had some of our African students in the past that go to India. Don't feel like you have to do a team exercise. That is just another optional portion of the application. And I don't know, how many of you did the team exercise? Did you guys do? No. So we have students here. Did you do it, Emma? Okay. Yeah. So most of our international students don't do a team exercise. So don't feel like you have to do that. So some frequently asked questions. Let's get it out in the open. What's the minimum GMAT or GRE score? So first off, we don't have a preference on the test that you take. So my advice in those areas is, take a few practice exams. Whichever test you perform better on, take that test. Focus on that test. Sometimes people will say that if you're going into investment banking or you're going into consulting, that you want to take the GMAT. That's becoming less of a thing these days. I know people who get top consulting jobs that take the GRE. Banking still are a little bit more sticklers for the GMAT. So if you're into one of those career paths, definitely reach out. But like I said, consulting, I'm seeing more people that are taking the GRE that are getting consulting jobs, and banking is starting to move that way too. If you're doing anything besides those other ones, don't worry about it. Submit the test that's most that you perform best on. Most people are going to take that test multiple times, so feel free to take it 3 or 4 times if you have to. That a lot of our scholarships are going to be, or your GMAT or GRE score does impact your scholarship. So sometimes it makes sense to spend a little money to prep to get a higher score. Our lowest scholarship, and I'll talk a little bit about that, lowest scholarship is about $5,000, and it goes all the way up to $120,000. So I'm like, are you going to spend an extra whatever amount of money to possibly get thousands more dollars? That kind of makes sense. That's your first business lesson will be return on investment, right? So think about that. So do you need to retake the test? What I'd advise is look on our website for our median scores here. I think right now our average GMAT is maybe like 719. Don't get spooked by that number. That's the average. There are ranges, and if you want to talk to me more specifically, we can do that, and I'll have my information there. But put your best foot forward. There are going to be other aspects of your application that can show us your academic ability, such as your undergraduate grades, or even the work that you're doing now. If you're doing highly quantitative work, there are ways around that. So anyway, if you have questions about that, I'll let you know, or feel free to ask those questions. There is an optional essay. Is it truly optional? And what should you cover in that optional essay? So yes, it is truly optional. We have people who do not even fill out that optional essay, so don't feel like you have to. In fact, as someone that reads hundreds of essays throughout this process, I breathe a sigh of relief when there isn't an optional essay. But that said, the optional essay should be used to cover any perceived gaps in your application. So let's say you have a gap in your resume that's over a month long. Maybe you know were laid off, or you were taking time off, or something of that nature. You might want to explain what you're doing in that gap. If your undergraduate scores aren't up to par in your opinion, or you think that might be perceived as a negative, speak to the context behind why that might have happened. Make sure in that optional essay you are taking the appropriate amount of accountability, of course, but give us some insight into the context. Other thing about optional essay is it doesn't have to be an essay. It can be bullet points. The statement, I was working 2 jobs when I was in my freshman year, and so there was a dip in my grades as a result. In subsequent years, you'll notice that my GMAT or my GPA actually increased, as I did not have those types of obligations, that type of thing. That's enough. We don't need any more than that. We get that all the time. The other thing that sometimes people will use the optional statement for is if their recommender isn't their immediate supervisor. So we understand in some cases, from a job security standpoint or a job advancement standpoint, you may not want your manager to know that you're applying to business school. We get that all the time. Just say, I use this other person who was maybe a manager that you had before, or a professional mentor, or something of that nature, instead of my manager, because I'm up for a promotion, or MBA is frowned upon at my job. We understand that. The one thing that I would say for your recommender, you want to have someone that is a professional recommender. Professors don't make good recommenders for business school. So find someone that is a professional recommender. Maybe you do something, maybe even you volunteer for an organization and you have some type of role there. Someone that you volunteer with could be good. Other thing, it should be someone who shouldn't be someone that you supervise, and it shouldn't be a peer. If you own a business, it could be a client, for example. If you're in a family business, your mom isn't a great recommender. Everybody's mother says great things about them, so find somebody else to do that. All right. Okay, how do scholarships and financial aid work? So the way that scholarships and financial aid work is all of our scholarships and financial aid is merit-based, and we consider everyone for a scholarship or for financial aid. So that's when I talked about your GMAT and your GRE scores and how they factor in. If you apply to business school with higher GMAT or GREs, you're more competitive in the pool. You're going within or through the at all schools, you're going to be more competitive for scholarships. So that's going to be one thing. Another thing is, if you come in and you interview well, we feel like you'd be a great fit. You have interesting work experience, etc. That's going to make you more competitive in the application, and the more competitive you are, the more likely you are to qualify for scholarships. So when you hear people say that it's a holistic process, that's what we're speaking to. The more competitive that application is, the more likely you are to get scholarships. And what we do at Ross is that we're going to give you the best scholarship out that we offer out of the at the time of your admission. So when you're alerted that you're admitted, we're going to tell you whether you get a scholarship, and everyone's considered. So we're pretty straightforward on that. If you have other questions, put that in the question box as well. And I've talked to you, is it easier to get admitted in round 1? No, it's not easier to get admitted in round 1. Recommend round 1 or round 2. But if you're most ready in round 3, apply in round 3. Okay, our fee waiver policy. So we have a couple fee waivers that are available. One is if you've worked in the Peace Corps, or there are some fee waivers for U.S. military. We just added one, and I'll actually drop a link in the I'll drop a link in the question box, but it's for something called least developed countries, and there are maybe 33 countries in Africa that actually will qualify. So I'll put a link in the chat box where you can see if your country is listed, and we actually will do a fee waiver for people that are applying from those countries. So so that's that. So with that, I will pass the mic over to Afua.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. So I'm going to run us through Africa Business Club, and then I'm going to make sure we have enough time to, get to hear from the members here and have your questions answered. I've seen some great questions pop up in the box. So essentially, the Africa Business Club was set up by the class of 2011, really to provide support for African students, right? So they looked at it from the lenses of how can we make sure that we're helping African students even before they come in, while they're thinking about their MBA education. And this is one such example, having such webinars to put you in touch with students currently in the program or alumni whom you could talk to based on what you're considering. And then also during the program, how can we make sure that we're building a supportive community that helps you navigate life in the MBA program, getting settled into a new space, whether it's socially, whether it's, your academics, what does navigating, the career aspect look like, recruiting. So during that time here, and then after Ross, what happens? How do we make sure that you're engaged with the alumni and the network that you've built? And so really we're a community that's really dedicated to building strong connections, not just amongst us, but then also making sure that the Ross community is, educated and also has oversight on what's happening within the continent. So really focused on making sure that we as Africans, our diasporans, allies, are really able to educate the community about our culture. We're able to build strong networks and make sure that we engage across board. And so with this, I'm going to move over and have us sort of introduce the board. Unfortunately, not everyone in the board could make it today, but we have Roy, Osborne, Emma here, and so I will just give them the opportunity to sort of introduce themselves by sharing with you where they're from, why Ross, what they did before Ross, where they interned, as well as what their plans after Ross looks like. And then if they could, share a little bit about what they do as part of the board and in building that supportive community. Awesome. So, Roy, if you could.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Roy Yewa. I am originally from Cameroon, West Africa, but my family moved to Michigan when I was about 3 years old. So I grew up in Lansing, Michigan. And then after on my undergraduate studies, I actually lived in Detroit for 4 years before starting business school here at Ross. Over the summer, I was doing investment banking in New York at RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, under the Industrials Coverage Group. So that was a really great experience, learned a lot. Really thankful for that experience. So now post-MBA, I'm actually looking at other investment banking opportunities, but my end goal was always to end up in private equity, so I'm actually recruiting for private equity as well. So that is that. So why Ross? For me, it was really all about the connection that Ross has with Detroit, where I hope to end up long term, and just trying to build on that connection, as well as when I came to Ross and I talked to a lot of alumni before, coming to Ross and then visiting other MBA programs. In terms of global alumni reach, Ross has probably one of the top, global alumni network of all the top MBA programs. And, with me being location agnostic, I figured, if I don't know whether I want to end up on the West Coast, East Coast, or Midwest. It's good to have connections and alumni to talk to in each of those areas, so that I have options. So that's why I chose to come to Ross. And with VP of Finance, really all I do here is make sure we don't go over budget for our events and activities throughout the year. So.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roy. This is Osborne. I come from Ghana, and I'm a second-year MBA at Ross. The reason why Ross stood out to me was the support of alumni. I had a lot of support when I was going through the application process, and that made the school really stand out to me. I've had a good experience so far, and I'm happy to help anyone who's interested in getting into Ross. Before Ross, I started off as an entrepreneur in Ghana and worked as a software engineer. This summer, I interned at Amazon on the Amazon Web Services as a product manager, which was a very exciting and interesting experience. I learned a lot working with cross-functional teams and working with engineers and product managers to build products. Post-MBA, I'm still interested in tech, but I'm also exploring consulting. I am the VP of events of the club, and so I make sure I am organizing and having people come together to network, to get to know each other, and also to share our values with the rest of the Ross community. At Ross, I'm part of most of the professional clubs, so the tech club, the consulting club. Socially, I'm also part of a lot of the other clubs where I try to network with people from other countries, get to know them, and get to share with them. One of the experiences I really enjoyed at Ross was the MAP experience. So I had the opportunity to work with Fidelity Investments, which is one of the biggest financial services firms in the world. At Fidelity, I was a consultant, and I helped them figure out some sort of strategy for the millennial market and how they can be able to position themselves well for that market. So that was a really interesting experience. Considering I had no background in marketing or consulting for a financial services firm. But Ross gave me that platform and really built my business acumen doing that. So I'll hand over to Emma to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Smith. I am the VP of Communications. I'm from Ghana. Before coming to Ross, I worked as a revenue analyst in Airtel Ghana, and then I transitioned to marketing and advertising, working with MTN in Ghana and Liberia. I spent my summer in India on a social impact consulting project with the William Davidson Institute, and I am happy to support the African Business Club to provide support to you as well, and then increase representation of African students at Ross. Why Ross? Ross has a lot of prominence when it comes to social impact resources, right? From scholarships to MAP projects to internships. There are a lot of opportunities to travel around the world and develop your understanding of what global businesses mean. And so I came here, and it's been a fantastic experience. For my MAP project, I work with AT&T at their headquarters in Texas, because having worked in Airtel and MTN, I was really interested in how the telco space was in Northern America. And I think that's basically it. Oh, as the VP of Communications, I make sure that you hear about everything that Ross is doing. So I'm going to hand it over to Ifwa.
Awesome. So before I talk about myself, there's another board member that's missing. I'm just going to talk briefly about Adanma. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today. So Adanma is from Nigeria. And prior to coming to Ross, she worked with ExxonMobil in Lagos. And so I have her details at the end of this session, and you can reach out to her as well to find out more information about her experiences here. Over the summer, she interned at Tesla. And she's our VP of Alumni and Career Development, so really runs a lot of programs around our mentorship initiative that we have, matching MBA 1s to MBA 2s, just getting career coaching and mentorship, runs a lot of programs we have around resume and cover letter reviews, and just, preparatory sessions for those coming into Ross, helping you get situated with what the landscape looks like. And so with that, I will talk about myself. So I'm Ifwa from Ghana, where I was prior to coming into Ross. I worked with GE in the healthcare business based out of Accra, but supporting the Africa region. And so this summer, I interned at Microsoft in Seattle. Interesting thing is I am a career switcher. And so within the first couple of weeks at Ross, I realized that my passion had changed. And so if you go back to read, a few of the things I wrote in my essay, that's not exactly what I'm doing, but, the support and, self-reflection processes that I've been through since I've been here have really helped me, craft that path for myself. And so this summer was really a summer to explore the human resources field, where I hope to go to after Ross. Why Ross? I really loved the experiential learning aspect. And I also, like most of my colleagues have said, I had the opportunity of working with 2 Ross alumni at GE, even though they were in a different GE business. But just in terms of the time they had to explain the process, even gave me course recommendations, and just the general responsiveness of the program office as well was really a great factor for me. And I've enjoyed, digging into these, experiential learning opportunities. I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of different student-driven initiatives as well. With that, I will just briefly like to, share with you some of the key initiatives we're looking to work on this year. We're looking to have more Africans at Ross, bottom line. And it's interesting in terms of, the Africans working in Africa who came into Ross. Last year, there were 5 of us from Africa, represented from Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. This year, there's 4 that were working in the region that left and came directly to Ross. But we have representation from Cameroon as well, from East Africa, Kenya. And so that's great that we're having a mix, and we're looking forward to having more of you. So we're here, reach out, let us know how we can help. Ultimately, we really want to make sure that we have an increased enrollment. We're looking to work on professional and career development opportunities. I know most of us come to our MBA to be able to, advance in our careers. And so we're really working on initiatives to bring a focus to help you, understand what the next steps look like, what are the opportunities that exist, bearing in mind that you're international, you're African. And we're also really working on forming close partnerships across campus. So not just within Ross, but in the wider University of Michigan community. And Brian already spoke to the fact that, there's so many classes, there's so many institutes. It would be a shame to just come here and not take advantage of that. So we're really tapping into our wider community here at the University of Michigan, as well as our wider African graduate student community. And we're also really focused on alumni engagement, making sure that our alumni is aware of what's happening. You can work with our alumni to understand and explore the opportunities that exist and build really strong networks. So it's not all just, career activities, but we also do have, some social aspect to it. So Osborne is going to talk us briefly through, what are some of the events that we're looking at having this year.
Okay, and in the interest of time, so we have some time to answer some of your questions. I'll quickly scan through this part. But the key takeaway here is that we really try to foster community and create support for our members. And also, we do a lot of events to create awareness in the Ross community. So when you come here, you won't be alone. There's a vibrant community where you can engage, where you can learn from others, and you can have fun whilst you still navigate the recruiting and then the learning process here. And so I'll end this and not go much into our activities so we can have some of you ask questions about the admissions process.
Awesome. So very excited to have you all on here. We're going to move on to the Q&A session, but what we'll like to say is come join us at Ross.
All right. So let's see how we're doing on questions. All right. Okay, so this is actually a good question. It says, could you share a few African-based or Africa-focused map projects the students are involved in? So, glad you asked.
As well.
What's that?
There's a picture to the bottom left of a group of Ross students that were in Ghana for MAP this May, working with Kolebu, which is one of the biggest government hospitals in West Africa.
And so it's really nice. We'll drop a website here into the question box, but this is like over the years the types of projects that have specifically happened in Africa. So so you can see you have some banking in Ethiopia. You have there's a Banyan Global in Ghana. We have projects in Egypt, Ethiopia again, you see Ghana again, Zambia. So if you look through here, Johannesburg, South Africa, you can actually see a lot of these different projects that happen year over year. The reason that I'm not going specifically in detail about all of these is if you do visit this website and you see something that you're interested in, let us know and we can try to put you in contact with people that worked on those projects. Every year the projects change though. So I did put all here. You can look at every class year. If I just look at 2019, and actually we've updated that. So these were the projects that happened in 2019. If you wanted to talk to someone specifically that's a current student, you'd be able to talk to them about those projects in Africa. But I talked about the William Davidson Institute. They are the institute that really sponsors these projects and sources these projects. So we tend to have a pretty robust offerings around projects in Africa. All right, so that's one question. Let's see. I don't know why this is here. Oh, you know what? I don't know that I showed the screen. I didn't show the screen. Let me show the screen here. Okay, no, it was showing the screen. All right, good. All right, so you will go back to. All right, next question is. How adaptive is the Ross MBA with trending issues? Not sure exactly what that's asking. Are you all talking about current issues in classes? How do those issues impact your class experience?
So what I can say is most of the learning is case-based, and cases are well-developed material that have been used over the years and test various aspects of the curriculum that we are learning. However, we also have the chance to talk about current issues happening, and they are brought into class discussions based on how it affects the class. And so I would say we have a bit of that very case-based learning and also have the opportunity to discuss current issues if they directly impact the discussions we're having.
Got it. Awesome. All right, so the next question is, does Ross connect its students to internships and jobs? So you all have been involved in this. Can you talk a little bit about how that the career process is handled?
Yeah, so with investment banking, it's really structured. So probably one of the more structured processes of recruiting here at Ross. And yeah, you get a chance to directly connect with different alumni at the different banks. So what usually happens is that the alumni from the different banks come to Ross and they'll do corporate presentations all throughout the fall. And then after fall break, during fall break, the bankers go to Wall Street and do a Wall Street trek. So there we're on the bankers' turf, and then we talk to the alumni at their banks, right, in New York. And following that, then you schedule kind of like on your own coffee chats. So you can schedule to talk to alumni at whatever bank you're interested in, and then from there they'll connect you with other people within the bank, right, who may or may not be alumni. So it's really good process, and they're really active and helpful. So
Osborne here, I can talk a little bit about tech. And so for tech recruiting, we have most of the tech companies coming to Ross to do corporate presentations and coffee chats, where you get the opportunity to have a one-on-one chat with the recruiters, ask them questions about what they're expecting from candidates who apply and what sorts of projects they put candidates on. And also Ross helps in terms of preparing us for the interview process. So we have support on our resumes, we have support on how we interview, we have support on creating elevator pitches that are compelling. And so that's how Ross helps us to get into the companies we're interested in when they come to campus.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, there are a lot of ways that are either required or opt-in that we've created structures to help you get that job that you want. A couple of things that weren't mentioned is that when you first start at Ross, we do something called Career Action Days. So you first come in, you have alumni from these different industries and functions that are talking to you about what life is like in that specific career, so that very early on you have the opportunity to really understand whether what you put in that application is something that you really want to do. And like Afua said, sometimes people do change, but what we want is we want to increase the opportunity for you to get that career that you really want, not just what you wrote down on paper. There's one-on-one coaching sessions that happen when you first start. So you'll have a career development office professional that sets up some time with you to map out what you want that career to look like. They're here throughout the process in recruiting to continue to coach you throughout your time here as well. We have multiple career coaches who are MBA 2s who have had success in the specific areas that our students want to recruit in, who serve as one-on-one coaches with you too, and they're actually paid to do that. So what we're basically doing is having someone who just finished that process successfully coach you on making it through that process. We also have something called FACT groups, and the FACT groups are, it stands for Functional Accountability Career Team. They're basically groups of students who are working together to understand more about the industry, but those FACT groups will also put together kind of a career curriculum. So while you're in class during the day, at night and on a weekly basis, they're telling you these are some terms that you need to know in banking or in tech or in consulting or whatever that is. They're saying these are the companies that will be on campus, and this is how you need to dress. They really break those things down. And then finally, we have different clubs that are working to bring companies to campus to give you opportunities to network with those companies, to do mock interviews where they're not evaluating you. And in certain industries such as consulting, there are people that are on campus from the BCGs, the Bains, the McKinseys, who are here setting up coffee chats or setting up sit-down meetings with you so that they can get to know you. So there are just a lot of ways that we're working with you. Oh, last thing that you may not know, you guys may not know this, we have something called a JAG team, a job action group. And so if late in your second year, and even in your first year, if you haven't secured a full-time job or an internship, there are teams that will, they'll call you and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? And they will put together customized programming to help you to get that job. So there are lots of opportunities. I always say is just come in and be coachable and listen. If you listen to the process, you can get a job. Let's see. That's about anything. Anything else you guys want to add? Oh, here's a good one. Does Ross offer any STEM type certification or major to allow for the extension of the OPT after graduation? If not, how does Ross support international students for jobs in the long run, not just 1 year post MBA? So that's a great question. We actually don't have a STEM type certification, but we're actually working on one. I was just in a meeting yesterday, so that's something that we're looking at specifically for extension of the OPT after graduation. What we do to help international students for jobs in the long run, one thing that I didn't mention is some of our alumni services that we have. One is that you can take classes at Ross for life. These are classes that people pay anywhere from $1,500 to $33,000 to take. You can actually take them for free as an alum, but we also have a career coach for alumni too. So we have people who you can basically work with to help you to find jobs, and that's not just international, or not just domestic, but it's international as well. A lot of what you're doing, especially if you are recruiting off campus, we're teaching you while you're on campus how to manage that recruiting cycle so that you're able to go out and utilize the network as well once you leave. So a couple answers for those things. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So on average, do African students tend to stay in the U.S. after Ross, or do they return to Africa? So that's a great question. That honestly depends. One thing that it's going to depend on is the industry. I find that a lot of students, if you're going into consulting, there's a mix. I think a lot of people who want to go back to the continent will typically do consulting, but there are other opportunities to stay domestic. If you're doing tech actually does sponsor more than some other industries. So then if you're doing tech, then that, someone may stay in the U.S. So a lot of it's going to depend on the industry that you're interested in and the function that you're interested in. So, okay. Oops. Let's see. So, what's that? Oh, energy. Is there one about energy? Yeah. So oil and gas industry after Ross, there are opportunities. One thing that you'll want to do is if you look at our career site, we'll have a breakdown of where people end up. Let me flash this up because I know we only have a couple minutes here. I'm gonna share our contact information. So next steps. Connect with students. We have student ambassador sites that you can actually visit to connect with our students. We have an admissions blog, and then we have different events. What we'll do is we'll follow up with some links to some of these things, and then finally, if you want to get in touch with us, here is our information where you can reach out to any of us, and we're happy to answer your questions going forward. Again, we really appreciate your time today. I don't know if you wanted to say any final words.
Just thank you for your time. We're here for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. We'll be willing to, and will connect you to people that can share a bit more, that can shed a bit more light on whatever career path you're considering or whatever other questions you may have. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, have a wonderful afternoon. I know that students have to, or evening, I'm sorry, evening. I know our students have to get to class. so we'll sign off here, but be on the lookout for a follow-up email. We'll also have a replay of this as well. Again, don't hesitate to reach out. All right. So with that, go blue and have a good evening.